The Earth was still recovering from the scars left by the alien invasion. Where once bustling cities stood, now only ruins and half-finished constructs of a superior race remained, towering structures that dwarfed human efforts. The once proud nations had become little more than puppet states, the strings pulled by a brutal alien federation that had imposed its will with an iron fist. A new world order had emerged, one where humans, despite their brilliance, were forced into submission. Most had resigned themselves to this fate, clinging to the familiar rhythms of an existence that, though stripped of agency, was still safe. But there were whispers, always whispers, of rebellion. There were those who refused to bow, those who sought to ignite the flame of human freedom once more. Among them was Captain Sarah Ward, a soldier, a strategist, a symbol of the untapped potential that burned quietly within the hearts of humanity. Her boots crunched against the broken glass of a long-abandoned street, her mind distant as she surveyed the ruins of what had once been a proud city. She had been part of the first wave of human resistance, a small but fierce group who had taken to the shadows and fought back with whatever they could muster. Their efforts had been futile at first, guns against ships that could disintegrate. Entire battalions in seconds, but every skirmish, every loss, brought them closer to something greater. Or so they hoped. The Alien Federation, vast and seemingly invincible, controlled everything. Its vast fleets could blot out the sun. Its machines could read thoughts and twist them into obedience. Humanity was nothing more than a cog in that machine. Or at least that's what the aliens had believed. And for years, they'd been right. Sarah had been there when it all began, when the Federation first arrived, their ships silent and menacing as they filled the skies. It had been a time of terror, a time of awe. They had come with promises of peace, of prosperity. They spoke in voices that seemed to hum with power, and their technologies were unlike anything humanity had ever known. The promises had been empty, however. Beneath the veneer of diplomacy lay an iron fist. The aliens were conquerors, their gift of technology nothing more than chains. They controlled humanity's thoughts, every movement tracked, every word analyzed, for compliance. But Sarah had seen something others hadn't. She had seen the spark of rebellion in those same alien eyes, the unease of a conqueror who had underestimated their prey. She had witnessed firsthand how the humans adapted, how they learned to turn alien weapons against the invaders. The resistance had grown, slowly at first, then with increasing intensity as humanity realized that they had more than just brute force at their disposal. They had ingenuity, resilience, and a deep, unshakable desire for freedom. But the stakes were rising. The Federation's grip was tightening, and they were growing desperate. It was only a matter of time before they would strike back with a fury that would wipe out all resistance. And Sarah, as much as she had prepared for this, couldn't shake the sense of impending doom. Her communicator buzzed, snapping her from her thoughts. She clicked it open. "Ward," her voice was steady, betraying none of the chaos that had been building in her mind. "Captain, we have a problem." The voice on the other end crackled. "They're building something. We think it's a weapon, something bigger than anything we've seen before. And it's not just a weapon, it's an entire new phase in their plan. It could change everything." Sarah's heart sank. "Where?" "Near the edge of the city. We need you to lead a team in. Whatever they're doing, it's a game changer." Her mind raced, 1,000 possibilities flashing through her head. The Federation had shown time and again that they were capable of unimaginable destruction. And now they were preparing something new, something worse. The balance of power was about to shift once more, but this time humanity might not survive the change. "I'll be there in 20, Sarah said, her voice calm, but inside the pressure was mounting. This mission could either be the key to liberating humanity, or it could be the last stand. She glanced up at the sky where the alien ships patrolled above, silent and unyielding. She had never felt so small, so insignificant. But she also knew that humanity had a power they would never understand, a power born of defiance, of hope, and the burning desire to be free. She had seen that power before. It was that power that had saved her life and countless others. It was that power that would lead them to victory, or, if they failed, to a desperate final struggle for survival. She turned on her heel, her mind already processing the steps ahead. There was no turning back now. The Federation had grown complacent. They had underestimated humanity, believing that their superior technology and advanced civilization could easily suppress a species as fragile as humans. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had left the spark of rebellion alive, burning in the hearts of the oppressed. And now that fire was beginning to spread. The streets of the alien-controlled city were eerily quiet, even in the heart of the Federation stronghold, where the air buzzed with the low hum of alien machinery. There was an undeniable tension in the air. The humans in the shadows had begun to stir, their movements becoming more calculated, their actions more daring. They were no longer content to wait for freedom, they were taking it. Captain Sarah Ward stood at the edge of a crumbled building, her eyes scanning the horizon. The familiar hum of the alien tech surrounded her, vibrating through her bones like a constant reminder of the Federation's presence. But now, that presence felt like a brittle shell. The cracks had begun to show. Humanity was starting to understand their power again, and that made the Federation nervous. "We've got a problem," a voice whispered in her earpiece, breaking her concentration. Sarah didn't flinch. She had become used to the subtlety with which her team communicated. "Report," she said, keeping her voice steady. "We found something," the voice on the other end continued. "A signal, hidden deep in the heart of the city. At first, we thought it was just another trap, but this is different. It's a message encoded in a frequency only. The Federation uses. They're planning something big, Captain. Something we've never seen before." Sarah's brow furrowed. The Federation had been careful, precise in their control over humanity, ensuring that any form of resistance was easily crushed. A message encoded in their own frequencies could mean only one thing, something far more dangerous than they had expected. "Where?" she asked, her pulse quickening. "Coordinates are coming through now," the voice replied. "It's not far from your location." Sarah exhaled slowly. This wasn't just another raid. This was a revelation. The Federation was up to something more than keeping humanity underfoot. They were preparing for something far more sinister, something that could reshape the galaxy. And humanity was the target. She turned to her team, who had gathered quietly in the shadows behind her. "Prepare yourselves. We're going in. Whatever they're planning, we need to stop it before it's too late." As they made their way through the darkened streets, the tension grew. Each step felt like it brought them closer to something monumental, a discovery that could either change everything or destroy them entirely. They passed alien patrols, hidden in the shadows, their glowing eyes scanning the surroundings. But they didn't stop. They didn't hesitate. They were far more dangerous than they seemed, and Sarah could feel it. The Federation had never been this bold before. The coordinates led them to an area on the outskirts of the city, an industrial district where the Federation had set up shop. The air was thick with the smell of chemicals, the ground slick with some kind of black liquid that glimmered under the alien lights. Sarah's heart pounded as they neared their destination, the weight of the mission pressing heavily on her. And then they saw it. A massive structure, dark and foreboding, rising from the ground like an ancient alien obelisk. It was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen, so alien in design that it didn't seem like it belonged on this planet. The sheer scale of it was terrifying, and yet it exuded a sense of calm, as if it were just another part of the landscape. But Sarah knew better. This wasn't just a structure. It was a weapon. "Get in position," she commanded. "This is it. We're not leaving until we find out what the Federation is hiding here." The team split up, moving with practiced precision. Sarah approached the entrance, her hand resting on the weapon at her side, every sense on high alert. She knew that once they entered, there would be no going back. The door opened with an ominous hiss, revealing a dark, cavernous space beyond. The air inside felt heavy, thick with an unnatural hum that sent chills down Sarah's spine. As they moved deeper into the facility, she could feel the presence of something far more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. And then she saw it. In the center of the room was a machine large, intricate, and impossibly alien. Wires and metal snaked in and out of the structure, and the walls were covered with strange, glowing symbols. It hummed with energy, as if it were alive. But Sarah's gut told her it wasn't just a machine. It was something else entirely, something designed to control, to dominate. "This is what they've been hiding," Sarah muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not just a weapon. It's a tool for control." Her mind raced, trying to process the implications. The Federation hadn't just conquered humanity. They had been systematically stripping away the will of every human they controlled, erasing any resistance from the inside out. This machine wasn't just a weapon. It was the culmination of everything they had been working toward. "It's a mind control device," Sarah realized aloud. "They're going to use this to wipe out any remaining resistance, to turn us into nothing more than puppets." The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. The Federation wasn't trying to crush humanity, they were trying to erase them completely. Her pulse quickened. There was no time to waste. They had to destroy it before the Federation could activate it. But just as Sarah stepped forward, her communicator crackled to life, the voice of her second-in-command breaking through. "Captain, we've got trouble. Federation forces are closing in fast. They know we're here." Sarah's stomach dropped. They had known all along. They had set this trap for humanity, and now they were walking right into it. "Get out now," she ordered. "We can't let them activate that thing." But as her team made their retreat, something unexpected happened. The machine activated, its hum growing louder, more insistent. And in that moment, Sarah felt it a presence. Not just in her mind, but in the air around her. It was as if the machine was reaching out, probing, searching for something. For her, the realization hit her like a slap in the face. The Federation had anticipated this. They had known they were coming. And now they had something more dangerous than any weapon, a way to control them from within. The race against time had just begun. The team was under fire. It wasn't a surprise. The Federation had always been a step ahead, but this was different. It wasn't just their superior technology or overwhelming forces, they had anticipated every move. And now, they were on the defensive, scrambling to stay one step ahead of the Federation's relentless pursuit. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as the corridors of the facility echoed with the sound of distant footsteps, their enemies closing in. The hum of the mind control machine still reverberated in her mind, sending a chill down her spine. It was like an invisible thread pulling at her consciousness, trying to sway her thoughts, twist her will. But she fought it, clenching her jaw and focusing on the task at hand. There was no room for weakness now, not after everything they had endured. "We're running out of time, Captain." Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Daniels, barked. His voice strained as he fired a series of blasts down the corridor, keeping the alien soldiers at bay. "We've got Federation troops on every side." Sarah's gaze flickered to the walls, where the soft glow of alien symbols pulsed ominously. The machine was still active, still trying to break them down. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a signal, a broadcast, spreading its tendrils across the galaxy, seeking out any remaining human will to quash. If they didn't stop it now, the consequences would be catastrophic. "We have to shut it down," Sarah muttered under her breath. But how? They had no idea how the machine worked, only that it was built to enslave them, to bend humanity to the Federation's will, erasing all autonomy in the process. "We're losing ground, Captain," Daniels pressed, urgency filling his voice. "The rest of the team's gone ahead. We're the only ones left who can stop this." Sarah gritted her teeth. The plan had been simple: get in, destroy the machine, and get out. But now they were caught in a game of survival, one that they weren't sure they were going to win. And that's when the cold reality of it hit her. The Federation's control wasn't just physical, it was psychological. They were taking their time, letting the mind control machine work its way through the team, subtly pulling them toward surrender. One by one, her soldiers were beginning to crack, their resistance faltering. "I won't let them win," Sarah hissed through clenched teeth, even as doubt threatened to creep in. Her mind was sharper than ever, but every instinct told her that something was wrong. They weren't fighting just for freedom, they were fighting for their very thoughts. The room around her seemed to shrink. The walls closed in, and she could almost feel the oppressive weight of the machine's influence, seeping into her bones, into her soul. The Federation was everywhere, and it was so much more than just alien soldiers with guns. It was a silent, suffocating force that reached into the hearts of the people, pulling their strings without them even knowing it. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her weapon tighter. They couldn't let the machine finish its work, not when they were so close. But then came the question that had been gnawing at the edges of Sarah's mind since the moment they'd encountered this device. What would happen if they couldn't destroy it? Would they be left as hollow shells of themselves, puppets under the Federation's command? Would they all become mindless drones? "Sarah," Daniel said, his voice strained, breaking her from her thoughts. "We need a plan. If we stay here, we're all dead. I can feel it. I'm not sure how much longer I can hold them off." The rest of the team had already made their way to the central control room, hoping to find a way to shut the machine down. But Sarah knew better than anyone, this was no simple malfunctioning piece of alien tech. If it was designed for control, then shutting it down wouldn't be as easy as pulling a lever or pressing a button. "We don't have a choice," Sarah muttered, eyes scanning the walls, looking for any hint of an access panel or weakness in the machine. "We shut it down, or we die trying." Daniels looked at her, his expression conflicted. "We can't fight this, Captain. I can feel my thoughts slipping, like something's trying to pull me under." His eyes darkened for a moment, and Sarah could tell that his mind was already beginning to break. "Stay with me, Daniels," she said, her voice sharp, demanding. "You are not a puppet." "We are not puppets. Don't let them win. Don't let them control you." He seemed to fight with himself for a moment before shaking his head, clearing his thoughts. "Right, we fight." As the two of them sprinted down the corridors, the machine's influence grew more potent, its power vibrating through the walls, shaking the ground beneath their feet. It wasn't just mind control, it was a mental assault, a force that twisted and warped their perceptions of reality. Sarah could feel it clawing at the edges of her thoughts, trying to pull her into its grip. It was becoming harder to focus, harder to stay strong. But Sarah wouldn't let them take her. She couldn't let them take her. The door to the central control room slid open, and they rushed in, guns raised, ready for anything. The control panel stood before them, alien in design, but not beyond comprehension. It was a mess of wires and shifting symbols, a chaotic jumble of technology that made no sense to the untrained eye. But Sarah wasn't just any soldier. She had seen this kind of tech before. She knew how to make it work. Her fingers flew over the console, inputting commands, bypassing the Federation's security protocols with the same relentless ingenuity that had helped her survive this far. But the more she worked, the more the influence of the machine clawed at her mind. The voices in her head grew louder, whispering lies, planting seeds of doubt. Why fight? Why resist? She gritted her teeth and slammed her fist down on the console. Not today. It was as if the machine heard her defiance. The glow of the symbols flickered, and for a brief, terrifying moment, Sarah thought she had failed. But then, the sound of whirring gears filled the room. The machine shuddered. The hum weakened. She had done it. But as the machine powered down, the ground trembled beneath them, and the walls shook. It wasn't over. Get to the exit. Sarah barked, adrenaline surging as she grabbed Daniels by the arm. They couldn't afford to stay if the Federation knew they were here. They would send everything they had to stop them. And the truth was, after this, they had no idea what would happen next. But they had one last chance. Humanity had one last chance. The walls of the control room shuddered under the weight of the Federation's retaliation. The machine they had just deactivated groaned, its death rattle reverberating through the facility as sparks flew from its core. Sarah's heart raced, adrenaline coursing through her veins, but it wasn't relief she felt, it was dread. She could sense it. The Federation wasn't just coming for them now. They were bringing everything. Captain, the whole place is going down. Daniel shouted, urgency lacing his voice as he turned toward the flickering exits. The room was already filling with smoke, the once stable ground beneath them trembling with every second. The machine had been the heart of the facility, and now its destruction was sending shockwaves through the entire structure. It was falling apart. We don't have much time, Sarah said, her voice firm as she surveyed the room. Their mission had been a success, but it had come at a cost. She knew that the moment they left this control room, they'd be hunted by every last alien soldier the Federation could muster. Her mind raced. They couldn't just escape, they had to make sure. This never happened again. The Federation would rebuild, adapt. They always did. But if they could deliver one final blow, if they could destabilize the Federation's hold over this world, maybe they could slow the inevitable. Maybe they could ignite a spark that would light the fire of rebellion for good. Daniels, she said, her voice low and steady, we're not leaving here until we do more damage. He nodded, his expression grim but determined. Got it, Captain. But where do we start? Before she could answer, the sound of heavy boots echoed down the hallway, growing louder with every passing second. A group of Federation soldiers appeared. In the doorway, their glowing eyes locking onto Sarah and Daniels. There were too many to fight head-on, and the moment the first shot was fired, the building would be sealed shut. No escape. Time to make a choice, Sarah muttered, her eyes scanning the room for anything they could use. And then she saw the power conduits running along the walls, connecting the various systems of the facility to the machine they had just destroyed. It was the core of the whole structure. Daniels, cover me, she ordered, rushing toward the conduits. The Federation soldiers fired at them, but Sarah dove to the ground, narrowly avoiding the blast. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she crawled, making her way to the power conduits. There was no turning back. If she cut the right connections, the whole facility would collapse in on itself, and the Federation's presence here would be erased in a flash. But it would be a one-way trip. Sarah, Daniels yelled, his voice strained as he fought back the advancing soldiers. Hurry up, they're closing in. Her fingers flew over the control panel as she ripped through the wires, trying to decipher the alien tech as quickly as possible. Sweat trickled down her brow, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Her whole life, humanity's future, depended on this moment. The glow from the Federation soldiers' weapons illuminated the room, and Sarah's mind raced. She could feel them coming closer, their presence suffocating, pressing on her every thought, making it harder and harder to concentrate. The machine, though deactivated, still buzzed in the back of her mind. It was still trying to reach into her thoughts, still trying to control her. She fought it back with every ounce of willpower she had, refusing to let the Federation have her mind, her soul. The wires sparked as she yanked them free, the sound of electricity crackling in the air. The first explosion rocked the room, a deafening sound that shook the floor beneath her. The Federation soldiers took cover, but Sarah kept working, her hands trembling as she completed the final step. There was no more time. "Daniels," she shouted, her voice echoing in the chaos. "Get out of here." Now, the walls around them trembled violently as a second explosion followed the first. The facility was coming apart. Daniels didn't need any further orders. He bolted toward the exit, his weapon firing back in short bursts to hold off their attackers. But the damage had been done. The facility was already collapsing, and the Federation's hold over this world was slipping through their fingers. As Sarah made her way toward the exit, another explosion sent a shockwave through the corridor. The air seemed to warp as the building groaned in protest. They had done it. The Federation's grip had been broken, and humanity's fight for freedom had reached its next stage. But this was only the beginning. But even as Sarah ran toward the exit, something caught her eye, a final message from the Federation's Central Command, flashing on a nearby screen. The words burned into her mind, and for a moment she faltered. "This is not the end. It is only the beginning. The Federation will rise again. Your victory is meaningless." A chill ran through her. They hadn't won, not completely, but they had taken the first step. The explosion at the core of the facility sent a shockwave that hurled Sarah and Daniels forward, sending them crashing to the ground just outside the burning wreckage. The city around them was collapsing. Fires and smoke billowed into the sky as the Federation's command center fell into chaos. But as the dust settled, Sarah's heart beat louder than ever. "We did it," Daniel said, his voice breathless but full of awe. He wiped the dirt from his face and looked over at Sarah. "We stopped them." Sarah looked at the wreckage, her heart heavy. They had struck a blow, yes, but it wasn't over. The Federation wasn't finished. They were only just beginning to see the true cost of what they'd done. And now humanity was rising, ready to take the galaxy back, one battle at a time. As the first of the resistance forces approached, Sarah turned to Daniels. There was no victory speech. There was only the weight of the fight ahead. "We fight or we die," Sarah said, her voice steady, and they would fight. As Sarah and Daniels walked into the horizon, the stars above them were no longer a symbol of defeat. They were a reminder of what had been and what was still to come. The Federation had underestimated humanity once before, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. The dust from the crumbling Federation facility still hung in the air, an acrid reminder of the battle that had just been fought. The horizon was clouded with smoke, the city now a jagged silhouette of ruins where towering spires once stood. Yet, despite the chaos, there was a quiet undercurrent of hope. Sarah Ward stood on the outskirts of what was left of the city, her eyes scanning the distant ruins, her thoughts weighing heavily on her. They had succeeded, yes. They had crippled the Federation's foothold, but it was only the first of many battles to come. The war wasn't over. Not yet. Beside her, Daniel stood silent, his face drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes were sharp, watching the horizon with the same tension. That still gripped Sarah's chest. The rest of the resistance fighters who had managed to escape the destruction of the facility were gathering, forming up as they prepared to leave the scorched earth behind. The Federation's forces were already regrouping. They wouldn't be down for long. Sarah's communicator buzzed, bringing her back to the present. She flicked it on, the screen flickering before a familiar face appeared. General Alvarez, one of the leaders of the growing human resistance movement. "Captain, good to hear your voice," Alvarez said, his face worn and lined with years of conflict. "We've received word from the outer colonies. They're rallying. Your strike on the core has ignited something. Humanity is waking up. The Federation is scrambling to regroup, but they're fractured. This is the moment we've been waiting for." Sarah couldn't help but let out a slow breath. The victory was bittersweet. Yes, humanity was fighting back, but the cost had been staggering. Lives lost, cities destroyed, and worse yet, the realization that there were countless more battles ahead. She had no illusions about what lay before them. "We'll keep pushing, General," she replied, her voice resolute. "But this is only one fight. The Federation will be back with everything they have. We need to be ready. I'm sending a report to the rest of the team. We need to fortify our position and strike before they can regroup." "We'll be ready, Captain." "Humanity's resilience is no longer in question," Sarah nodded. The words felt hollow in her chest. Resilience wasn't enough. It never had been. They needed more than resilience. They needed something the Federation had never accounted for. They needed unity. They needed to believe in their bones that they could rise higher than their oppressors. Turning off the communicator, Sarah looked back at Daniels, who met her gaze with an unspoken understanding. There was no celebration, no triumph in their eyes. They had won, but only at great cost. The Federation had been weakened, but not defeated. "We can't stop now," Sarah said softly, almost to herself. "This is just the start," Daniels nodded. "We don't have a choice. We keep pushing. We keep fighting." The wind picked up, carrying the faintest scent of burning wood and metal. It was a symbol of the destruction left in the wake of their resistance, but also the hope for something more, something better. The Federation had imposed their order on the galaxy, sure, but humanity's defiance had begun to carve out a new path, a path that no empire, no matter how powerful, could crush. Sarah took a deep breath, the weight of leadership settling heavily on her shoulders. She had come into this fight as a soldier, a leader of the resistance, but now, after everything they had endured, she was something else. She was a symbol of humanity's unbreakable spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest hours, there was always a chance for something greater, a chance to reclaim what was stolen, to restore what was broken. But with that new understanding came new burdens. She could feel the loss in her bones, the countless people who had given their lives to this cause, the friends she had lost, the faces that would haunt her every day. It was hard, knowing that the fight ahead would take more, would demand even greater sacrifices. And yet, in the deepest part of her heart, there was something else, something that fueled her forward. It was that same fire that had kept humanity standing in the face of annihilation, the unshakable belief that no matter what the Federation threw at them, they would rise. Her eyes lingered on the ruined city, the skeletal remains of the machine they had destroyed, still faintly visible in the distance, as if the scars of the past would never truly heal. But the present was theirs, and that was enough. The days after the battle were tense, as the survivors regrouped and made their way to the next step in their journey. The Federation was fractured, yes, but it wasn't gone. The war had only just begun. Humanity was not yet united in its fight, but that was changing. In the outer colonies, pockets of resistance were organizing, their forces growing stronger. Messages of hope had spread across the stars. Sarah knew they couldn't afford to lose this momentum. They needed to build on the victories they had won, but they also had to address the divisions within their own ranks. Some factions wanted peace, some wanted revenge, and others simply wanted to survive. Sarah had seen the desperation in the eyes of the people who had fought and died for this cause. She knew that the war would never be easy, but the one thing she had seen again and again was that humans, despite their flaws, despite their mistakes, were capable of incredible things when they believed in each other, when they fought together. And so, she prepared herself for the coming battles, for the trials yet to come. She knew that sooner or later, the Federation would regroup. But humanity had shown its true strength. The fight for freedom was far from over. It had only just begun. As Sarah gazed into the distance, she saw the first of the human fleets gathering, their ships slowly assembling as a new, reluctant alliance formed. The Federation was not defeated. It was not gone. But the fires of rebellion had spread, and now the galaxy would be forced to reckon with the undeniable truth. Humanity was not a species to be controlled. It was a species that fought to survive. And that fight had only just begun. The night sky above the ruined city was an eerie canvas, flickering fires casting shadows over the landscape, their pale light dancing across the jagged remnants of buildings. It was a sight of destruction, yes, but also of rebirth. For in the darkness, humanity was rising. Sarah Ward stood at the edge of the crater that had once been a thriving district. Her eyes were distant, tracing the faint outline of the human fleet as it began to regroup in the distance. She could hear the quiet hum of the ships, the collective heartbeat of resistance, their engines powered by the strength of those who refused to surrender. The Federation had been struck a devastating blow, but they were not down, not yet. The road ahead would be long and filled with sacrifice, but Sarah knew that humanity's strength came from their refusal to give up, even when it seemed like all was lost. Behind her, Daniels approached, his footsteps light against the cracked concrete. He didn't speak, but Sarah could feel the weight of his presence, the understanding between them. The war was far from over, and there would be no easy answers. But there was something else now, a conviction shared by every person in the resistance. Humanity would never be content to bow before any force that sought to control them. "I was thinking," Daniels began, his voice low, "about what Alvarez said, about the colonies rising up. There's no way the Federation will sit back and let us take control of the galaxy. They'll retaliate with everything they've got." Sarah nodded, her gaze never leaving the ships in the sky. "I know, and I'm ready for it. But it's not just about fighting. It's about showing the rest of the galaxy what humans are capable of when they're united. The Federation is strong, but they're not invincible. And we," she turned to face him, her eyes fierce with determination. "We've already shown them that we're not going to bend to their will. The rebellion is just beginning. We've set something in motion that they can't stop." Daniels offered a small, grim smile, his expression hardening with resolve. "It won't be easy, but I think you're right. We're in this together, and we'll fight until it's over, no matter what it costs." Sarah's mind flashed to the faces of those she had lost, the soldiers, the civilians, the friends who had sacrificed everything for this cause. It was for them, and for the countless others who had suffered under the Federation's oppression, that she fought. But she also fought for the future of humanity, a future where they could live without fear of being controlled. She turned, her gaze back to the fleet above them. The ships were now gathering in formation, ready to move, to fight, to survive. "We can't lose sight of what we're fighting for," Sarah said, her voice carrying the weight of everything that had come before, everything they had endured. "Freedom. It's not just a word, it's a right. And we'll do whatever it takes to secure it for humanity." The horizon seemed to pulse with energy, the promise of new battles on the horizon, the flicker of hope amidst the destruction. The Federation would not surrender easily, but they hadn't counted on humanity's tenacity, on the fire that burned in their hearts. As the first ships began to depart, Sarah felt a strange peace settle over her. The fight would continue, but humanity was no longer a victim. They were the fighters now. They were the force that would shape the future of the galaxy. And as Sarah looked up, she knew one thing with certainty. This wasn't just the beginning of a war. It was the beginning of humanity's rise. The stars above were vast, too vast to measure in a single lifetime. And within that endless expanse, the Federation's reach still stretched, its shadows looming over distant worlds. But Sarah knew, with a certainty that burned in her chest, that humanity was no longer a passive player. They were not a footnote in the galaxy's history. They were the new power. The fleet scattered across the cosmos, each ship carrying the hopes of a people determined to be free. But with each victory, new threats would emerge, new factions, new forces, perhaps even ancient enemies hidden in the darkness of the universe. The Federation might rise again, and the galaxy might fracture further as old alliances collapsed and new ones were forged. Somewhere in the depths of space, a new force began to stir, one that had long been forgotten by both humans and the Federation alike. A force that had been watching the events unfold from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to make itself known. And far from the remnants of the Federation's power, Sarah felt it. A new, unfamiliar presence, a ripple in the force that stretched far beyond the familiar enemies they had been fighting. There was more to the galaxy than they had ever known. And whatever came next, humanity would have to face it together. As the screen faded to black, the final words echoed in the stillness. The Federation may be broken, but the galaxy is far from conquered. The real battle for the future of humanity has just begun. The story of humanity's rise was far from over.